You should interview them too.
Do you think people should wait for the perfect market?
The way we keep it 99% drama free, and then there is a law that changed.
That's so smart. I did not know about this.
Yeah. You can tell by those little things who they did that for.
Buying your first home is one of the biggest financial decisions you will ever make. If you're currently buying or just considering it, this episode's for you. Welcome to the Sharma Show. I'm your host, Prarna Sharma, and today we have Nick Sproul, a seasoned real estate agent who's going to guide us through the home buying process. If you like the episode, you know what to do. Let's dive in. Let's talk about buying a house.
Okay.
For somebody who's thinking about buying their first home, what should they do even before they start looking? Like, what is,
Yeah. They probably are already browsing on Zillow,
Yeah.
right? But the steps in the process, the very first thing you should do is get connected to a good realtor.
Mhm.
I'll drop my information
Okay.
in there at some point. But I actually recommend getting connected to a good realtor even before the lender part. And the reason why is because the realtor-lender relationship is like a quarterback and a wide receiver. Like
Okay.
if the lender and a realtor have a good relationship, they're communicating frequently through the whole transaction, making sure that everything's on track. For a lender that doesn't do a lot of business with a certain realtor, they might be great at what they do and trying to earn that business, but they might not.
Right.
So getting connected with a realtor, I would say, is the first step. That realtor should do two things to start. Well, first they're going to find out, what is this buyer actually interested in? Can I help get them what they're looking for? But the second step is getting connected with a good lender. And if you're working with a great realtor, you should take their recommendation and talk to their lender. Doesn't mean you have to use them, right? But you should interview them too. And if you already have somebody that's your go-to person or that is giving you a better option, then that's totally understandable. But get pre-approved is the second step.
Yeah. So basically, you get your pre-approval, talk to your realtor about, one, the process, two, what kind of home you can afford.
Yeah.
With your pre-approval document, with you and that number.
Yeah.
Where the location, your, things that you want, things that you don't want. And then just start looking, right? That's the fun part.
That's the fun part. I like to set the search up live with the client in the consultation because there's so many criteria that we can change in that search. And if we're doing it live together and we put in all your criteria and it comes up with 3 matches, then we need to go move the criteria around and find you some more options. And then there is a law that changed that before you can actually start looking at properties now, you have to have what's called a buyer-broker agreement signed.
Or because of the NAR settlement.
So that was one of the laws that changed from that settlement. There has always been an agreement that gets signed by a seller and a listing agent to outline their relationship and the compensation and all that when they're going to sell their property. But there was not previously a requirement for that for the relationship between the buyer and the buyer's agent.
Right.
So now there's a document that we sign that outlines the way that the buyer's agent gets paid and what their duties are to each other.
So before that, it was basically in the listing contract, but now after the settlement, they said that the buyer's agent won't be compensated at a certain amount. So now you have to physically sign that extra document.
So have
that set up before going through the entire process.
Correct. So before we even start looking at houses, I'm letting the buyer know that I'm working with, hey, here's how much I get paid on a transaction. Here's the percentage, right? Every single offer that we write, we're going to write that percentage in for the seller side to pay. With this change, with the changes that happened from the settlement, very little has actually changed in the way that real estate is done. 90% of the time, the seller side is still paying the whole compensation to the buyer's agent. Probably 10% of the time, they're paying a good chunk of it, and the buyer might have to make up a small portion of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's the usual percentage that the commission fee for the buyer and seller's agent?
So there's no, I can tell you what I charge. I cannot say, legally I can't say this is an industry standard. The reason that settlement happened was they were accusing realtors of price fixing, basically, of saying this is the standard commission.
Okay.
So
when there isn't any.
Correct.
People can make up
commissions
whatever.
are negotiable.
Okay.
Commissions are negotiable between agents, between sellers and their listing agent, between buyers and their buyer's agent. All commissions are negotiable, and that was the thing that that the settlement was trying to say, that realtors didn't make it sound negotiable. So, anyways, when I'm on the seller side or the buyer side, 3% to my side is what I charge.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now we're at the chores point, which is the fun part.
Yeah.
Any red flags that people should look out for, like overly renovated homes in a bad location? I think I see that a lot.
Yeah, and sometimes, and so going back to our previous conversation, if you're a flipper, right, what you know is you can probably pick up those properties at a lower price point to start, put your renovations in, and then, make a good profit on that property. I usually encourage people to look more at the location of the property and the bones, the structure of the property, the bigger. You can redo a kitchen.
Yeah.
A kitchen, and everybody's not going to want to go through that, and that's fine. So somebody might need something that's turnkey ready. But if you have to choose between a totally renovated property in bad location or an unrenovated property with great bones in a great location, choose the unrenovated property and do the repairs yourself over time.
That's just a more economical.
Yeah.
It's a better investment.
It is.
Right?
Yeah, you put the sweat equity in yourself.
Yeah.
But we have, we can usually tell when a house is a flip when we're walking through it. And sometimes I'll if I can tell that something's totally remodeled, we're looking to see, did they remodel it as low cost as they possibly could, put lipstick on a pig, for lack of better words, or did they do, do they use higher end materials in the kitchen and put a nice waterfall on the island, and you can tell by those little things who they did that for. Did they do that for themselves
or for yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Are you still doing online tours? I know during COVID, and maybe even for out-of-state buyers.
For out-of-state buyers.
I did that, the online virtual option.
I have had people buy properties over FaceTime. And I've had people not see the property in person until they closed on it, It's less and less now.
Yeah.
It's not as common as it was during COVID, but still, the Northeast migration to Florida is still one of the big. New York, New Jersey migration to Florida is still pretty prevalent. So some of those people can't come down for every tour, and we'll do FaceTime showings. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I have never heard about the closing without seeing. I know I made an offer without seeing the house, but I would feel so. A bit worried about closing on it without seeing the place.
Yeah, and that's if you have throwaway money,
yes,
right?
That's the kind of money you need.
If you can just
one
buy
day, Nick.
Yeah, exactly.
One day.
Yeah, but no, most people, especially if they're buying for a primary residence or a secondary home, most people, even if they can't be there for every showing, will fly in for the inspection period,
and
they have the right to pull out during that inspection period if they want to. Yeah.
Do you think people should wait for the perfect market to buy?
What is a perfect market? No, it's you've probably heard me say this before, and I'll probably say it for the rest of my career, but the best time to plant a tree was yesterday, and the second best time is today. Real estate's going to go up, right? As long as you're able to hold on to that property. Now, if somebody told me that they were going to buy a house and keep it for a year or two and then sell it, that's a different story.
Right.
And we don't always know what the market's going to do in the next year. We can look at overall trends, and there's a lot of people moving to Florida. We know that these prices are going to go up over time. Right. So perfect time to buy, right? So I bought my first house in 2018, and rates were low, so that was awesome. But even at that time, I thought we must be at the height of the market. We've been climbing for so long. Little did I know what was about to happen in COVID.
Right.
I bought my first house then. I just bought a house, a new primary residence for myself 6 months ago in the current market. And the differences between those two markets are that in this market, yes, interest rates are higher, so you're paying more interest on that.
Right.
But properties are sitting on the market longer than they were.
So you have more room for negotiation.
You have more leverage.
Right. And I feel like with the interest rate, at least the anticipation of the Fed lowering the rates and mortgage rates falling, even if you buy now, you can always refinance it.
Yep.
I'm not saying that's what everyone should do, but it's an option.
Right. No, I fully agree. The house that I just bought, and there's all kinds of tools to be able to help out with that interest rate. So what I did on the house that we bought this year was something called a 3-2-1 buy down.
Okay.
So what that means, so when I made an offer on this house, I actually paid full price for the house, but I got a $35,000 seller credit. The $35,000 out of the seller's proceeds credited to my side of the deal. I could have negotiated the price down $30,000, right? But instead, I kept the price the same, and I asked for a seller's credit, and I was able to get it. So I used that $35,000 to buy down my interest rate. And you can either buy your interest rate down permanently for the life of your loan,
right,
or you can do something like what I did, 3-2-1 buy down. So here's what that means. Interest rates at the time I bought were high sixes. So let's say I would have got a 6.9 as my interest rate when I bought without the buy down. My interest for my first year owning the property is a 3.9. The second year is a 4.9. The third year is a 5.9. And the fourth year is a 6.9 for the life of the loan.
By that time, it's gonna the interest
that
rates
is
are
my
gonna fall.
bet,
exactly.
Right? Yeah. That's my bet in doing something like that.
Right.
I could have bought it down permanently at a 5 maybe or something, but my bet is that before I hit 6 on mine, I will refi that property.
Yeah, that's so smart. I did not know about this.
Yeah,
this is insane.
And there's tools like that if you're working with a good realtor and a good lender, they can kind of help you with some of those tools.
And what's the other smarter thing is, if by you not lowering the price of the house and taking that money as a seller credit, you don't have the next time you go to sell the property, it's going to be a percentage of your you bought it at this price in 2024 and now it's appreciated 10% or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
But you did not go down on the price.
I didn't lower
really
the value
smart.
in my neighborhood.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's really smart.
Yeah. It worked out well for me. But and that's the thing. So every buyer has a different situation. For some of them, they need their monthly payment lower, and so it's about this balance between how much cash do we have to close versus our monthly payment, and where can we flex a little bit.
And then you can sometimes ask for closing credits too, right, from the seller.
Yeah.
Do you think people should always buy instead of renting?
I think the only exception is kind of like what I said a few minutes ago of like, if you don't think you're going to be if you're like, I think I'm going to want to move out of South Florida in 2 years, then sure, maybe it's not the right thing for you to do to buy. if you're buying the right type of property, then you could still gain some great equity in 2 years and hold that property as an investment regardless of where the appreciation goes in 2 years. So that might be an opportunity for somebody that wants to do that. But I hear people like Grant Cardone and some of these people say that like buying your own house is a liability and not an asset. Yep. And that blows my mind. I bought my first house for $350 and it's worth like $650. Right. And in South Florida we have great appreciation and there's a lot of people moving here. So I think if you're going to be in the area for longer than a couple years, I think you owe it to yourself to build that equity.
Okay. Yeah. So now let's say I found my perfect house. We've been touring for 2 or 3 years. And finally, I found my house.
No, you're fired. No, I'm just kidding.
So let's say I found my house. Now I want to make an offer. Uh-huh. What am I looking at? Meaning, What are some contingencies? And this was new to me when I actually bought the house. It's like, what are these contingencies and what's important and what's not?
Yeah. So typically, this just happened yesterday while I was showing properties, is like either while in the house or right when we walk out, the client goes, Nick, we like this one. What should we offer on it? Mm-hmm. And I usually am like, just give me a minute. Yeah. Because I can't do my due diligence in my job and be ready to give you an answer right in that moment. So the first thing we do when we decide we want to make an offer is pull all the comparable sold properties, all the relevant properties in that neighborhood for the last 6 months, because that's what an appraiser is going to do. Mm-hmm. So we're already like getting ahead of having any appraisal issues, but I also want to know, how did they price this house, mm-hmm. right? We don't want to assume it's worth what they're asking, but if the range is $50,000 apart, did they price on the high end of that or the low end of it? Mm-hmm. And that's one piece that tells us how much leverage do we have and how aggressive can we be with our offer. The second thing that I do, which all agents should do, but very few do, I've learned from experience, mm-hmm. is I call the listing agent and try to pull as much information out of them as possible about the seller's motivation.
I remember that.
Yeah?
Yes, that helped a lot. That helped me a lot.
It does help a lot. The house that I was showing yesterday, the agent told me, he shouldn't have told me this because it helped us decide how to write our offer. But unless the seller is okay with him telling me this. But in most cases, I wouldn't tell this if I was the
seller's agent. Yeah.
He said, these people need to sell. The husband already has a job relocation and he's working in Texas right now. They can't make an offer on their next house until they get this house under contract. He should have not told me that. That tells me we can be aggressive. Right. We can negotiate with you. You need a deal,
to
right?
Get out of here.
And so a lot of agents, the ego is there. They like to hear themselves talk and they say too much, but it helps me and it helps my clients. So we're going to gather as much. I'll ask them, have you received any other offers? Have you rejected any offers? Uh-huh. And sometimes they'll tell me the number that they rejected, which again, like, you're giving me leverage here. Right. So we always try to get all that information. With those couple things, we come together and decide what we want to offer on the property. And that's a negotiation on price and terms, so I don't know how deep you want to get into those terms. But, yeah.
The terms, but by that you mean if there's a or the closing time or things like that.
So that's one of the terms, and the more, if your terms are really good, you might be able to negotiate more on price. If your price is really good, you might be able to get some better terms, right? So, for example, closing timeline, that's one of your terms. Typically we're doing 30 days is pretty normal in South Florida. Inspection period, typically we're looking at a 7-day inspection period. Seller concessions or seller contributions, like I was talking about on mine. So we did the same thing on the offer we just wrote, knowing that they need it sold. We asked for a large seller concession to get the buyers money towards their closing costs. Okay. So those are some of the terms. loan commitment period, escrow deposit.
So let's say the inspection goes through and the buyer wants to, get out of the deal. Do they get their escrow money back?
Yes, you can pull out. You can pull out of your contract during the inspection period for any reason at all. You don't have to explain yourself. So if you just walked into the house and you saw your grandma's ghost and you're like, I can't do it. You don't have to explain yourself to the other side. You have the right to pull out and get your escrow deposit back. After your inspection period, there's still contingencies in the contract that would allow you to get your escrow back, but you don't get to just change your mind after that.
That's probably related to more of the lender and the mortgage
financing,
issues.
title issues,
So what are some issues that can come up after the appraisal? Let's say the appraisal comes in low.
Okay.
So one option is either pull out of the deal. The other one is you compensate for that money, whatever is the difference, or you negotiate more terms.
Exactly. So if I'm representing the buyer, the very first thing we're gonna do is try to get the seller to come down to the appraised value. And they may do that, they may not. It just depends on the activity in the market and on that property. If the buyer likes the property enough, they can bring the difference. If it's a $10,000 gap and the buyer has an extra $10,000 on hand, they can bring that to the closing table and fill that gap. But the most common outcome is a negotiation somewhere in the middle. So maybe seller comes down 5 and buyer comes out 5, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
And now we get to the closing day.
Mm-hmm.
Any chaotic memories from the closing day, or?
Luckily, in most cases, it is rare that the buyer and the seller are ever in the same room during a transaction. So most of the time, the seller's closing before the buyer does, and they close in separate times, sometimes separate locations. In the beginning of my career, I did have some tense ones where the buyer and the seller negotiated their ass off during the whole transaction and then had to be in the same room with each other, and it was silent.
So we're gonna wrap up with the rapid fire round.
Okay.
I'm gonna just throw some quick questions at you. Don't think too hard.
Okay.
Just whatever is your first gut response. Okay. So what's the one thing that immediately turns you off during a showing?
During a showing, distractions. So I can tell if the listing agent, if I'm representing the buyer and the listing agent has not prepared the house for sale, they probably haven't prepared the seller for what's about to happen either. It might not be a very professional agent. So if I walk in there and I see the entire family history in the house, I know that the agent didn't prepare them that this house is here for a buyer to be able to really picture it as their own, So personal stuff, like overly religious stuff. Yeah. I've seen some profane things on wall, or in the world that we live in today, overly political stuff. Yep. Too. That will I can see that will drive a buyer straight out the door just because they disagree politically. Right. Yeah. It's crazy.
What about should first time home buyers focus more on a house or a location?
It's a both and, but
depends from person.
Location comes first. If you can afford the location in the neighborhood that you want to be in, then zero in on that location and find a house that needs more work, like we said before. But don't just choose the house because it's really updated. If you don't like the location.
Right. Yeah. What about private showings versus open house? Which one's better?
I like private showings better because in open house you're hearing the opinions of everybody around you. Right. You don't get the opportunity to picture the house as your own and think about what you would do with it. So private showings.
Curb appeal or interior design?
You need both, but they're not. Typically, people use the exterior as their cover photo, so nobody's clicking through to see your interior photos if the front picture sucks.
Right. Do you prefer working with buyers or sellers?
My business has shifted more to the seller side.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's it's changed over the years, but typically in the beginning you get referred to more buyers, and as your business builds, you get referred to more sellers.
What's the most overrated home feature?
I don't know. Overrated home feature. I think it's maybe if the backyard has some kind of, like, there are easy things to do to change a yard and make it what you want it to be. So overrated, I would say, is like somebody seeing a tiki hut and being like, this is my house, right? Like, I can get that tiki hut put in for $3,000. Yeah. It's about the space that we have, right? Yeah. So little exterior distractions that are not really worth much. Yeah.
Do not add to the value.
Yeah.
If you had a magic wand and you could change one thing about the home buying process, what would it be?
Change one thing about the home buying process. It's the access. It's the belief that everything you're seeing on the consumer sites is real. Zillow has properties on there that have already sold. Zillow has Zillow is not as updated or accurate as the MLS. When we set up your MLS search, it's for your specific criteria. So if you find a house that's not in there, but it is in the area, and you send it to me, if it's a house you want to see, we're still gonna go see it. But there's a reason why it doesn't match your criteria, you know?
Interesting.
So it's just, or like people, the monthly payment calculators on those websites, kill that. I wish that could be deleted because it's
There's so much more to that.
It's so false. There's 42 factors that affect your monthly payment. 42 personal factors. The only way you're going to know what you are going to pay monthly for that house is by working with a good lender.
And then the taxes and the insurance, that can't be just estimated on Google.
Yeah,
there's so much more to that.
Right. Zillow can't do that with an algorithm.
Right.
Okay? But a lender can do that a lot more accurately by looking at the house and by using a tax estimator to figure out future taxes.
What about a house trend that's like an interior design trend that's fading away?
So a few years ago, we used to refer to, I would walk into a house and be like, oh, this one's flipped gray. Like everything was gray everything. Gray outside, gray inside, gray kitchen, gray bathrooms. And that's kind of gone. People are bringing some more colors back in. What's really been popular and continuing to be popular as a trend, I'm repainting my house right now, is contrasts. You saw for a while a lot of people doing the stark white house with all the black trim.
Right.
And that's still popular, but I think doing like a dark brown or a dark blue or something like that is more popular even, but still like a hard contrast.
Okay.
Yeah.
What are your top 3 quick tips for buyers?
Top 3 quick tips.
Yeah.
Work with a good realtor. You need if an agent doesn't understand the state of the market, they're not going to be able to help you leverage your offer and get the best deal possible.
Okay. Great marketing.
Great. Yeah, thank you. Don't hire the cheapest inspector you can that you found online, right? Like when we refer inspectors, it's because we know that those people will do a thorough job. If a buyer that I'm working with is to hire an inspector that I don't know, which is totally their right and their decision, but if they hire one that I don't know and that inspector gets me a vague or a weak inspection report with no details on it, I can't negotiate for them. And they could have just lost out on thousands of dollars.
Okay.
And then the third tip is single families over condos. This one's controversial.
Especially in South Florida. I would agree to that. Maybe not else.
Yes, not everywhere. Disclaimer. But in our world, land values appreciate a lot more than condos do because our land is scarce here. You should buy a condo if you want to buy condo lifestyle, right? Like if you want to live at the top floor and have an awesome view and you want to have walkable restaurants below you, I get that, and you should buy a condo, but you've got to make sure that the financials of that building are in good shape, because the condo world is kind of a mess right now in general.
Yeah. All right, I think that's it for me.
All right, cool. I hope that was helpful.
It was great. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And to everyone listening, I hope you learned something valuable today. I know I did. Thanks for tuning into the Sharma Show. Until next time, keep house hunting. Thank you.
Thank you.